Today is May 16, 2026. In a significant escalation unfolding in the waters near the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian forces seized the Chinese-linked floating armory vessel known as the Huichuan on May 15, diverting it toward Iranian-controlled areas and prompting swift monitoring and response measures from U.S. military assets positioned in the region to safeguard commercial shipping and counter threats to freedom of navigation. This incident, involving a Honduras-flagged ship operating as a mobile weapons storage platform for private maritime security teams, has added fresh complexity to the ongoing disruptions in global energy flows. And if you are finding value in this detailed daily breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now for daily updates that deliver comprehensive factual insights straight to your feed, keeping you ahead of these critical global developments. As the situation developed, U.S. Central Command coordinated with allied naval forces to track the vessel's movement while enforcing operational zones established in response to the broader February-initiated conflict that first restricted tanker traffic through the critical choke point responsible for roughly 20% of worldwide seaborne oil transport and substantial liquefied natural gas exports from key producers like Qatar, leading to sustained elevations in Brent crude prices, hovering near or above $100 per barrel, as markets price in persistent risks from mines drones, naval engagements, and now this seizure of a floating armory stocked with defensive weaponry intended for rental to anti-piracy teams protecting merchant vessels in high-threat areas. The Huichuan's capture raises immediate questions about the disposition of its substantial inventory of small arms ammunition and related equipment, which had been managed under commercial arrangements linked to Sinoguards and other maritime security entities operating in a legal gray zone of international waters to comply with port restrictions on firearms while enabling protection for tankers and cargo ships navigating waters plagued by piracy and now compounded by state-level tensions. Chinese officials engaged in urgent communications regarding crew safety and the vessel's status, given its beneficial ownership ties with Beijing, expressing concern over the unauthorized boarding that occurred approximately 38 nautical miles off the United Arab Emirates coast near key hubs like Fujairah, while the United States maintained a firm posture through destroyer patrols, air reconnaissance, and targeted enforcement actions that have included disabling Iranian vessels, attempting to challenge established security protocols, and intercepting potential threats aimed at commercial or allied assets, thereby demonstrating calibrated resolve without immediate broader escalation. This event intersects with the aftermath of the Trump-Xi summit in Beijing, where both leaders emphasized the need for stability in the Strait of Hormuz and avoidance of actions that could further inflame energy market volatility. Yet the seizure highlights the challenges of implementing such understandings amid ongoing Iranian operations and the layered alliances at play across the Persian Gulf. Economically, the cumulative impacts have forced Asian importers to pivot toward longer-haul supplies from the Americas, and West Africa elevating freight rates, insurance premiums, and overall logistics expenses, with European buyers already managing post-Russia supply adjustments, now facing even tighter LNG availability that has driven spot prices higher and prompted industrial curtailments in sectors reliant on affordable energy for chemicals, fertilizers, and manufacturing processes. Global institutions, including the IMF and World Bank, have updated assessments indicating that sustained disruptions of this nature could reduce worldwide GDP growth projections by up to 1% or more in the current year, with emerging markets bearing heavier burdens through inflation, currency depreciation, and increased fiscal costs for fuel subsidies, while producing nations in the Gulf ramp up alternative export efforts where feasible, though the physical bottleneck at Hormuz limits full mitigation and keeps the risk premium embedded in oil futures. In parallel, the private maritime security industry is reassessing deployments, with many operators pausing use of floating armories in the immediate vicinity due to heightened vulnerability, turning instead toward land-based alternatives or enhanced naval coordination, which requires time investment and regulatory adjustments across flag states. U.S. military responses have included precision monitoring and readiness to neutralize threats to navigation with recent actions, underscoring commitments to protect commercial flows and allied interests in an environment where asymmetric tactics such as fast boat swarms or drone deployments test response thresholds. The humanitarian dimensions encompass risks to crew members aboard the seized vessel, potential environmental hazards from any confrontations in busy shipping lanes, and the broader economic strain on coastal communities dependent on safe maritime trade for livelihoods. Regionally, Gulf states have heightened alerts around their economic exclusion zones, coordinating with international partners to prevent spillover into port operations and energy infrastructure critical for global supply stability. This incident further amplifies the psychological effects on shipping confidence, leading more operators to consider the Cape of Good Hope route, despite adding 10 to 14 days to voyages and increasing bunker fuel consumption that feeds back into higher global costs. And if you are finding value in this detailed daily breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel for daily updates and in-depth analysis that connects these maritime incidents to their far-reaching economic and geopolitical consequences, helping you navigate an uncertain world with clarity. On the diplomatic front, indirect channels remain active as stakeholders seek pathways to resolve the Huichuan matter peacefully, while addressing underlying tensions from the initial conflict phase that saw retaliatory measures and naval posturing limit tanker transits to fractions of normal volumes. China balances its substantial oil import needs from the Gulf with calls for de-escalation and protection of its commercial assets following the Beijing summit pledges for continued dialogue on energy security and avoidance of nuclear proliferation risks. In the United States, domestic energy policy discussions incorporate these events with references to strategic reserve releases and accelerated diversification efforts, including renewables, nuclear restarts, and domestic production ramps aimed at building resilience against single-point, choke-point vulnerabilities. Market reactions have featured volatility in commodity benchmarks with defense and alternative energy stocks, showing relative strength as investors anticipate prolonged uncertainty and policy adaptations. The Ukraine-Russia conflict continues in tandem with recent large-scale barrages, adding pressure on European energy alternatives and reinforcing the global nature of supply chain fragilities. BRICS meetings in India have touched on mechanisms to enhance collective resilience, including alternative trade and financial pathways, though outcomes remain incremental. Military analysts observe that U.S. capabilities in the region provide robust options for proportionate responses that deter further provocations while minimizing escalation risks, with advanced systems proving effective in intercepting threats and maintaining operational awareness through integrated intelligence. The floating armory seizure may prompt international reviews of regulatory frameworks governing such vessels to prevent their exploitation in contested zones, while commercial operators adapt contracts and risk models accordingly. Environmental monitoring continues for any signs of incidents that could affect sensitive marine ecosystems in the Gulf of Oman. As Saturday trading proceeds with typical weekend liquidity dynamics, underlying positions reflect caution pending fresh statements from involved parties or updates on the vessel's status via satellite and tracking data. Broader implications touch on technology transfers, strategic competition between major powers, and the role of hybrid tactics in modern maritime disputes. This tapestry of events illustrates how localized actions in critical waterways can reverberate through global markets, influencing inflation growth forecasts and policy decisions across continents. Observers continue to parse open-source intelligence for indicators of next steps, whether diplomatic breakthroughs or additional enforcement measures. And if you are finding value in this detailed daily breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel for daily updates that bring you verified factual reporting and contextual understanding without hype, allowing informed perspectives on fast-evolving situations. Further into the developments, the U.S. military's unleashed responses have focused on containment and protection of sea lanes, with reported interceptions and zone enforcement that signal clear boundaries while avoiding direct confrontation over the seized armory itself, which remains under close watch for any movements or negotiations regarding its release. Iranian framing of the action ties into asserted regional security management, yet draws criticism for complicating already strained commercial navigation. Economic modeling incorporates scenarios where repeated maritime incidents prolong the Hormuz premium, affecting everything from retail fuel prices in the United States to industrial competitiveness in import-heavy economies in Asia and Europe. Strategic petroleum reserves in multiple nations have seen draws to buffer shortfalls, with calls for coordinated international releases gaining traction. In East Asia, the recent summit outcomes provide a backdrop for measured responses that prioritize stable energy imports without alienating key relationships. Domestically, political discourse in various capitals integrates these events into debates on foreign policy, energy independence, and alliance management. The private security sector faces operational reviews that could lead to innovation in protective measures or greater reliance on state naval escorts for high-value transits. Subscribe to my channel daily updates. Human rights and crew welfare organizations have issued statements urging transparency and safe resolution for personnel involved in the Huichuan incident. Environmental assessments highlight the potential for accidents in crowded waters where armed vessels operate, adding urgency to de-escalation calls. Global trade organizations note the compounding effects on supply chains already stressed by prior disruptions, with container rerouting and inventory adjustments becoming standard practice for risk-averse firms. As information flows continue from verified sources, including maritime alerts, official briefings, and commercial satellite imagery, the international community monitors for signs of stabilization or further tests of resolve. This period underscores the interconnected vulnerabilities of modern energy and trade systems, where choke points like Hormuz amplify regional tensions into worldwide economic signals. Analysts project that resolution of the immediate vessel seizure could open avenues for narrower confidence-building measures, even as core disputes persist, requiring sustained diplomatic investment. The U.S. approach emphasizes strength, deterrence, and openness to deals that secure long-term navigation rights. China's engagement seeks to safeguard economic stakes while navigating complex triangular relations. Regional players enhance their defensive postures, contributing to a multi-layered security presence. Collectively, these dynamics shape near-term outlooks for oil, LNG, and related commodities, with traders adjusting hedges and scenario plans. And if you are finding value in this detailed daily breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel for daily updates and ongoing coverage that equips you with the context needed to understand how today's events influence tomorrow's markets and policies. Extending the narrative, the broader Hormuz situation continues to drive investment reviews toward diversified routes, pipelines, and overland corridors. Though such infrastructure shifts demand years for full realization, leaving near-term reliance on naval protection and adaptive shipping practices. In Ukraine, parallel energy strains from conflict-related supply alterations compound global pressures, prompting solidarity funding and transition accelerations among European partners. Technological applications in monitoring and defense play growing roles, with satellite, drone, and AI-assisted systems enhancing awareness and response times for naval forces. Financial markets reflect these realities through sector rotations and volatility clustering around news flow. Humanitarian aid efforts address both direct conflict impacts and secondary effects of elevated living costs in vulnerable populations. The situation demands vigilance, adaptability, and factual grounding as developments unfold across multiple interconnected theaters. The situation remains fluid, with developments evolving rapidly based on open-source information from verified reporting and official statements as of May 16, 2026. And subscribe, Samu.